Hey, Brandon. So I'm just going to give you a little video tour of our stuff. You asked about how we did the power, and I had partly made this shawl for Lisa that is super flexible and I think could be inspirational for the stuff you're doing. But it might be a little too much work. I think there might be a better way to use the strips. So first of all, the USB, let me just spin this around really quick. Okay, so you can get like a 10-pack of these USB connectors, and this particular set I got has slightly beefier traces. This is I'm not sure if they're male and female. I guess this is a male or whatever. So the outer two connectors, this one and this one, are positive and negative. Those are the only two we use. And basically, we just use like 22 gauge wire and put a ton of solder onto these and solder it in, and then kind of cram it in here and zip tie and tape it shut or epoxy it shut. So that gives us our own kind of high current USB connectors. And then Corey found these USB packs on Amazon for like 15 bucks. And previously we've used these Jackeries. I found these ones for also $15, and then right before Burning Man they jacked the price to $20. This is a supposedly 6,000 milliamp hour battery, but they always do a little bit of tricky math, so it's more like 5,000 probably. And then this one is 5,000. They both, for our scarves, give you like 3 hours of runtime, and you can kind of see how big they are. So yeah, that's what we use for power. I would just say get a bunch of those, like 3 times as many as you need, or something 2 times as many as you need. And then you can also, using some like soldering, you can make micro USB connectors that plug in here to charge them, like make 6 of them that all plug in together, something like that. So yeah, that's the power. And then for the scarves, we made our own PCBs. And here, wait 1 second. Which is probably a little bit of overkill, but Corey was totally into it. So we made this, and it's basically an adapter board for an Arduino Nano. And it does a couple things. One is it has this pinout for 6 connectors, or 7, that go to this radio module. And then it has two more connectors, an LED connector and a rotary switch connector. And these are both 4-pin JST connectors. You can buy pigtails of these, or like this prefabricated, pre-crimped female and male connector with an extension of 4 cables. You can buy a pack of like 10 or 20 of those for like 10 bucks. So that saves a lot of time, because crimping is a fucking pain in the ass, these JST connectors. So we made those, and then we bought a bunch of these rotary switches and fabricated our own little like wiring harness for them. So the legs on them are really delicate, so we've soldered onto them and then added a bunch of silicone to kind of give it some stiffness. And then we attached this other male, or I guess this would be the female JST. Maybe it's male, the male JST. So yeah, these 2 things plug together like that. Depending on how many buttons or like connectors you might have, getting a bunch of these might be smart. So yeah, that's that part. And then also regarding power on our board here, sorry. This is just more silicone insulated stranded like 22 gauge or 26 gauge, 22 gauge I think, wire. Let's see, 20 gauge. And I highly recommend the silicone stuff, because it's really a lot easier to strip. You can even strip it with your fingernails. It's extremely flexible. It's much more flexible than like PVC coated wires. And silicone is much more heat tolerant, so if you're doing a ton of soldering, it won't melt the insulation. So yeah, the silicone stuff is great. And we basically just figured out the lengths we wanted, soldered them into these bad boys, and then on our boards, we've got a power connection spot where those two beefy wires go in. So that's how we did the power. And one last thing. If you don't feel like making PCBs, which probably don't do it, you can get this stuff. This is like perf board, but if you look carefully, that says busboard prototype systems. And what's cool about this particular perf board is it's kind of hard to see, but if you look carefully, like right here, you can see that those two holes are connected to each other with a trace. So it's like a breadboard in that you can fill a hole from like the pins of something or other or a wire, and then put another thing in the other side, like the pins of an Arduino header, and they're connected. So you don't have to do so much of this kind of routing around. Probably took me, I don't know, an hour to make this thing, and maybe it took me more like 2 because I messed up my first design. I just had to do it over again. But yeah, so what I did is I got these header pins in like I forget what they're called, like 2.54 millimeter header pin kit. If you just look that up on Amazon, you'll get a bunch. And usually these headers, these female headers, come in long strips. And if you practice, you can use side cutters to chop right in between two of them and cut them into whatever length you want. And then they have little pins sticking out the bottom that you solder in. So if you're only making a couple, this is probably the way to do it. And let's see if I remember which way this goes in. I think it's like that, hopefully. Yeah, so this is the same as that PCB that we made. It's just a little more modular, easier to test. But it's got all the same stuff, even the power. So yeah, that's that stuff. And in this next video, I'll show you the way I'm doing the shawl.